Do you think India's sovereignty has been compromised? Is China on the rise or decline? Do I think India's sovereignty has been compromised? We are not a technologically sovereign nation. Please understand that. Technologically, look, we are talking right now. I am communicating with you all, taking your questions right now in real time, right? Am I doing this because of Indian technology? I'm not, right? I'm using an American platform to do this. If this platform and all these platforms disappear, we Indians will have no way to communicate with each other. Social media, you know what it's done? It has given the average Indian person a voice for the first time in 1,000 years. And we are all able to communicate with each other in real time, all of us, wherever we are in India and in the world, because of these platforms, these social media platforms. All of these platforms are American platforms. If these platforms disappear, we will have no idea, no way of staying in touch with each other, right? So do you think we are technologically sovereign? We're not. Technologically, we are not a sovereign nation. And I think the government of India should do this on a war footing, to have our own platforms as a backup at least, so that in case the Western platforms disappear for whatever reason, we Indians can stay in touch with each other. I think it's important for us as a nation to remain in touch with each other no matter what happens, to be able to communicate with each other in real time. It's happened only because of the West. It's not happened because of India. It's not happened because of Indian companies or Indian government. So India is not a technologically sovereign nation, not at all, and that is an area of great concern. It doesn't seem to be something that is high on our list of priorities. That the fact that we are technologically not sovereign. Are we territorially sovereign? Yeah, we are territorially sovereign, more or less. Some parts of our territory are in foreign control. Obviously, we know that. POK, Gilgit-Baltistan, Aksai Chin, and so on. Yeah, that's an issue, certainly. There is the issue of Manipur. A whole few 100,000 foreigners are squatting on Indian territory in Manipur and oppressing the natives. That's an issue. So there are some gray areas which are of great concern. There is the fact that there's 100 million Bangladeshis on Indian territory. That's an area of great concern, and that doesn't seem to be once again on a very high on the list of priorities, that we need to get rid of them as soon as possible. So yeah, there are definitely issues, but overall, if you look at the big picture, macro perspective, 10,000-meter level, India is one of the four sovereign nations overall. But yes, you raise good questions. You raise good questions here, and there are certainly areas of concern. Is China on the rise or decline? Technologically, China is on the rise. Technologically, China is the only nation that can compete with the US almost neck to neck. So that way, China is on the rise. China has no real threat apart from the US and perhaps to some extent Russia. Uh, India is not really a threat for China. India can defend itself, but India is not a threat for China. China is not afraid that India will tomorrow, suddenly march upon Chinese territory and take away Tibet or whatever. That's not a fear the Chinese have. It's not a realistic fear. So China only has the US as a threat, and to some extent perhaps Russia, but they are managing Russia right now. So technologically, they are very much on the rise. Demographically, they are in decline right now, and that's a big issue for area of concern for them, because by 2100, their population will be about half of what it is today, and the population will be the average age will be about in the 60s, which is an area of great concern. But they're hoping that they can use AI and robotics to offset that issue and so on. We'll see about that. But a nation has to be young in order to be vigorous and energetic. Your population ideally should be in its 20s or 30s. The average age, the median age of a population should ideally be in the early 30s or late 20s. That's ideally what you want. In India, it's about 33, 34, which is an area of concern. In China, it's already higher than that. So there are issues in China. There's a demographic collapse that's impending, which is not an urgent issue, but a very big issue long term. But technologically, it's on the rise. Militarily, it's untested. The last military engagement of any kind they had, serious engagement, was in 1979 when they had a war with Vietnam, which they lost. But that's in 79. Today is 2025, a long time ago. And there was another clash in 1987 between India and China, which India won, but it was a very minor thing compared to the Vietnam, the war that China had with Vietnam. They tried to invade Vietnam. So China's military is untested, but their military is very powerful, at least on paper. Their navy is very powerful, at least on paper. Numerically, it's the largest navy in the world. They and you know what is the real measure of a navy's power? It's not how many ships you deploy at sea. The only measure of a navy's firepower or lethality is how many missiles you can deploy at sea at any given point in time. Let's say I have a navy that can deploy 100 ships today, right now, and each ship has one missile. So my lethality is 100 missiles. Let's say your navy has 20 ships, and each ship has 5 missiles. So you also are deploying 100 missiles. So your 20 ships are equal to my 100 ships, because you have 100 missiles that you deploy and I have 100 missiles that you deploy. If the Chinese can deploy 200 ships and each ship has 30 missiles, 200, that's about 6,000 missiles they're deploying. That's a whole different scale of firepower. So the only measure of a navy's strength is how many missiles they are able to deploy at any given point in time on average. And the Chinese, I think, are quite up there with the Americans, maybe even higher than the Americans. And the question is, how many can we deploy? How many missiles are we deploying on a routine basis at sea? Our best destroyers have about 32 or 36 missiles, I think, or 32 perhaps. Those VLS tubes and all that. I think it's a big area of concern. We need to have higher missile deployment per ship. Not sure what the thought process is, but yeah, there are concerns. Anyhow, that's the answer to your question.